These are the Sundays I long for here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel and recapping what was to this point, without question, the best Saturday of the college football season. Paul Finebaum, Matt Barrie, as we are each and every weekend, are recapping the absolute insanity that is college football. Before we get to on the field, I want to take this moment to congratulate the great Paul Finebaum, who was inducted into a Hall of Fame this week. I was on his show Thursday, but I had Peter Burns, not Finebaum. They're like, Matt, Finebaum's getting into a Hall of Fame. No big deal. So, Paul, congratulations. Which Hall of Fame are we a part of now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was really honored, but Matt, here's where the awkward part comes in. On Thursday night, 2 nights before the biggest game of the year in college football, at my alma mater, I'm at the University of Alabama School of Communication, being inducted into a Hall of Fame, and it was as you know, I lived in Alabama most of my career, so that's really where my heart is in terms of my professional career.
Sure.
But when Laura Rutledge mentioned it at the beginning of the program yesterday in Knoxville, I almost wanted to put my hand over my face, like, please don't give these fans here a reason to dislike me. I'm one of theirs, especially. But it was interesting to kind of get the feel. The event was across the street from Nick Saban's office, so you could kind of feel the tension building in T-Town.
So it's a perfect segue because only the great Paul Finebaum could be in Tuscaloosa the week of Alabama, Tennessee as a Tennessee alum, while the game was going to be in Knoxville in a matchup that going into the week, there were a number of us when I was on your show Thursday. I mean, I flat out said, look, Alabama needs Bryce Young, and this is going to be a shootout. And the Alabama fans think, well, wait a second. Alabama defense, we don't do shootouts. We step on you while you're down, and this is how it's going to be. But Paul, we'll dive into all the details. But I just want initially your reaction, 52-49, in what's going to go down as an all-timer in this storied series history.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it in full context, I mean, we saw one of the most dramatic college football games in modern time. I think the scene on the field may have been the best I've ever witnessed, Matt. And I know that you can debate it. Am I colored by my ties to both schools? Yeah, maybe I am, but it's still. I mean, I mean, I'll give CBS a little credit. I don't never want to give them too much, but I mean, they let that moment go for a while, and I think it was important too, because we understand the game, but there are too many detractors out there who are about to watch the NFL that think college football is some hackneyed sport. Well, yesterday was the personification of the sport, and it's why people like us are so passionate. There's a lot of troubling signs coming out of it for Alabama, as well as positive signs for Tennessee. But the troubling sign for Alabama is that if I could whisper this to you,
please,
Alabama does not look well coached.
It wasn't so much of a whisper.
That's off the record, I say jokingly, but I mean, well-coached teams don't commit that many penalties. Well-coached teams don't have moments like that at the beginning of a game when you know what is on the line. And to Alabama's credit, yeah, they came back and had the scoop and score, but then they also give the game away. With a pass interference. I mean, how many times late in that game did you say to the folks you were watching, it's over? And it wasn't. And those last 18 seconds in the parlance of college football were about as well executed and well coached as I have ever seen by Josh Heupel.
Yeah. So you think I want to touch on that point really quick, because no matter what Tennessee did, I mean, and they got that big lead, 28-10 at one point, clicking on all cylinders. No matter what they did, you always had the thought in the back of your mind, you're like, Alabama still has this in them. And on the scoop and score from Dallas Turner, you're thinking, here it comes. Here comes Alabama. Here comes Roll Tide. They're going to go in there. They're going to break Tennessee's hearts again. This is just how it goes. But you bring up something interesting, because here's the sign that I'm looking at with Alabama to kind of further your point. They don't make Nick Saban coach teams historically have not made this many mistakes, especially in crucial moments. But Paul, 17 penalties, 130 yards, most by a Nick Saban coach team at Alabama. That breaks the previous record set by Alabama, which they just had this season against Texas with 15. So now you've got 2 consecutive weeks of Alabama penalty records under Nick Saban. This time it got him against Tennessee. And despite all they could do with Bryce Young and coming back and fighting, they did their part to try to overcome it. But at the end of the day, there was a team finally who was a little more talented on Saturday and a little better coach who took advantage of Alabama's mistakes, and Alabama got because of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is at least the third time this year I have felt that the other coach outcoached Nick Saban, Sarkisian, Jimbo Fisher, and now Josh Heupel. And when I say Nick Saban, that's all encompassing.
That's yeah.
Fans love to go after the coordinators. You know that, Matt. And on our program, it's always about what Bill O'Brien did wrong and what Pete Golden did wrong. I was looking at Twitter last night, and Pete Golden this and Pete Golden that. Well, I got breaking news for everybody watching and listening right now. Nick Saban is the de facto defensive coordinator, and don't think he's not. Now, offensively, yeah, plays can get past him because even though he is the head coach, not much, but that's not where he specializes. He specializes in defense. So let's cut this. Let's get rid of Pete Golden. That's Nick Saban's boy, okay? And I'm not suggesting anything in connection to Nick Saban, but let's quit sugarcoating it. This has been a trend now for a couple of years, and in almost not every, but in almost every road game we have now seen that. And I don't want to go through the litany, but I will, Matt, just to refresh people's memory. Last year against Florida, almost lost. It took a save at the end. We saw what happened against A&M a year ago. Alabama did lose that game, and then they were about to lose the Auburn game, and it took a miracle Bryce Young comeback in 4 overtimes. And then again,
don't
Texas.
Forget LSU and Ed O's send off.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that game was in LSU in Tuscaloosa. But last year and this year we had Sarkisian. The one outlier was Arkansas, and that was a game Alabama lost its momentum and came back. So, but it is a trend, and what does it mean? Why is this team so out of sorts on the road? And I am not suggesting a single thing other than this program seems to have slipped a little bit. Now, as soon as you say that, some guy's going to come out of the upper deck and go, well, hey, they played for the national championship in January. Thanks for reminding Matt and I. We happened to sneak into the game.
Yeah, but I mean, it just never. And we touched on this. Which team coming into the game felt more right? It was Tennessee. After what they did to LSU, and then after what Alabama had to survive with Jalen Milroe against Texas A&M coming into the game, and all the Alabama people, and I'm not piling on Alabama fans, but they were telling us, you guys are idiots. Like, relax. Yeah. Tennessee's they're not legit. We've done it 15 years in a row. They'll get their comeuppance on Saturday like they always just. Okay, Tennessee's cute. We're still Alabama. Paul, now you have to look big picture. Alabama still has to get Ole Miss undefeated. Ole Miss will be in the top when the rankings come out. We taped this for the rankings. They were at 9th on Saturday. They're going to be within the top 7. You still got to go through that. Now, I know Tennessee's got Georgia in 3 weeks in Athens. But now you're looking at a real possibility. Alabama can't afford another misstep. They're going to have to win out, including the SEC championship, to get into the playoff. Tennessee and Georgia have allowed themselves a misstep because of what happened yesterday. If I was doing SEC power rankings today, I'd go probably Georgia 1 still / Tennessee. I'd go Georgia 1 or 2, 1 and 2 Tennessee. 3, I might even look at Ole Miss and then Alabama based on what we have seen. And maybe you can flip-flop Alabama and Ole Miss, but it's not Alabama's conference, at least the Sunday after the Tennessee game.
I agree. And the one thing about Ole Miss, I'll remind people of, their schedule is in front of them. At LSU, at A&M, say whatever you want, but Ole Miss is on the road. They have not really been tested yet. And then Alabama. So, and Mississippi State at home. Mississippi State's an impossible team to figure out. I had coaches telling me Friday afternoon, for retired head coaches, that might be the 3rd best team in the SEC. Well, that did not live to see the end of the weekend. But it shows you what they're capable of. And And I just, it's hard to really quantify what the problem is at Alabama. To me, if you talk to any coach or any former player, when players continue to make the same mistake over and over again, there's something going on. I had a old time friend of mine from Alabama text me last night, and he said, "You think Saban is losing it?" Now, I say that just to bring it up. I don't think Nick Saban is losing it, but is the program the same as it was 2 or 3 years ago? No, it was at a different state. Now, there's always been these dips. Now, if the
Yeah.
kicker could have made the 50-yarder, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. Kicking has always, I mean, Alabama lost a shot at a couple of national
Yeah.
championships because of field goals. And then last year and the year before, he was making these field goals. So I mean, I don't understand all that. That those things happen, but this program really doesn't seem altogether, in spite of how close they came to winning that game on the road yesterday.
I'm merely asking the question. I know we'll probably get hell for asking this question, but it wouldn't be responsible if we don't have the conversation, because you had mentioned something there, the last 2 to 3 years. Well, what's changed in college football over the last 2 to 3 years? Okay. You've got
Exactly.
millions of dollars of NIL coming into star players, and you've got a transfer portal where Nick Saban was always, I'm going to recruit the best players, I'm going to develop them and cultivate my own talent here in Tuscaloosa. Now he's going and getting Jahmyr Gibbs, who, by the way, is the most talented player on offense, in my opinion, aside from Bryce Young. You're going to get Jermaine Burton. You're bringing in guys, Henry Toto. You're going to get guys that you didn't recruit and raise. Not that they're the problem at all. In fact, they're the reason this team is so competitive. I'm merely trying to ask, Paul, has the evolution of college football, whereas 5 years ago, Nick Saban he's on top in Tuscaloosa, the players are just lucky to be there. Now you've got players making reportedly millions of dollars in a college atmosphere. So it's not, I don't know. I'm merely asking the question.
I think it's fair. And I'm sure as soon as this gets posted, some Alabama fans are going to say, "Well, Matt Barrie, haven't you looked at your own rankings at ESPN? Alabama's #1 in the recruiting rankings." But I don't think that matters anymore, Matt, because it can change so quickly, and nobody's there for long. And I think Saban was slow to conform. Jimbo Fisher definitely got the jump on him a year ago. That's changed, obviously, but
Yeah.
they're just. Nick Saban is a coach that he's brilliant and he's a genius, and players want to be part of it. But my concern now, and you've laid out what's happened until now, is if it looks like slippage, is it just a few drops, or is it a geyser? And I referenced last week, and it's, people go up, quit going old school, but I'm one of the few people around long enough to have watched the end of the reign of the greatest coach in college football history of a different era, Paul Bryant, and
Yeah.
now I'm watching the current GOAT. And what ended Bear Bryant, and I know he died after he retired, but his last year was a mess. And I'll remind the audience one more time what happened. The #2 team in the country went to Knoxville on the third Saturday in October and was upset. And it was the first time in 11 years, and it led to confusion and chaos. And then they ended up losing 3 more games, and it was over. I'm not suggesting that with Saban, because he seems like he is in more control.
Yeah.
But he is at a very dangerous point of his career should he lose another game and get knocked out of contention for the playoffs.
The one thing that you can say with, for, and against coaching, you can't control a dropped pass. You can't
Right.
control some of the on the field play outcomes or decisions these players had. You can't control what you can control. And it's the one thing people point to with coaching: penalties, lack of discipline. It's the one thing people go, well, this guy needs to go. And I'm not saying
Right.
this with Nick Saban, I'm saying big picture. Well, the penalties are ridiculous. This guy, there's no discipline on this team. 15 against Texas, 17 last night. that if we're looking at cracks, I would look at the penalties
Yeah.
first prior to the outcome and the final score.
And that it's getting worse opposed to better. So anyone out there who wants to say, well, Alabama can still win the national championship. Yes, they can.
Absolutely.
But the trend lines are not good. And that's all we're suggesting here. And I know it's the morning after a gut wrenching loss. And I mean, there have been worse, but losing to Tennessee is a big deal in the parlance of Alabama football. And you just have to keep your eyes on this. I love pundits who go, well, you got to make staff changes. Well, calm down. That's not going to solve this problem. What is going to solve the problem is on Nick Saban's mind today. And he said, we'll learn from this. Well, you obviously didn't learn from Texas.
Right.
And you didn't learn a thing from Texas A&M. What are you going to learn now, Coach Saban?
We're going to find out as we head into week 8. We're at the midway point of the season. What's the trajectory now for Tennessee?
Well, fortunately for Tennessee, they're playing UT Martin this week.
That's right. Brilliant scheduling, by the way. So good.
It really is, because I mean, I think it was the 82 game that we talked about, or it was when they lost to Alabama. I think they dropped the next game against somebody. That is just, I mean, you've seen that too many times. And they still have a couple of dangerous games left. They have Kentucky, which is who knows, and obviously the Georgia game. But I think the trajectory is through the moon. Being around Heupel yesterday, it was interesting. We had Heupel on our show. I know everyone was watching it. And I think Tebow asked Heupel. He said, it feels like you guys have all the pressure on him. And Heupel just kind of blew it, brushed it off. Heupel does not, nothing phases this guy. And that's so interesting. One of my friends was trying to compare him this morning to Steve Spurrier 2.0. But I will say this in a small sample, he's got one of the more interesting and creative approaches. And it doesn't hurt to have the quarterback that nobody wanted, Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, to grab him from Virginia Tech. And it's funny we bring up the Josh Heupel love now, because I'm old enough to remember when Danny White came from UCF and brought Heupel with him. People were like, well, what the hell is this? You're bringing a guy who got fired at Oklahoma as an offensive coordinator, goes and picks up Scott Frost, leftovers from UCF, and he was on the decline. I mean, you couldn't find a better situation for Josh Heupel to be in the Sunday after. He's the hottest name in college football right now.
He is. And I by the way, I was one of those people wondering, Matt, as you well know, I was with you the next. I mean, it seemed like, I mean, the guy just went out and grabbed the convenient coach, but he obviously saw something. And I think it's I think the fact that we're sitting here talking about Tennessee beating Alabama in 22 is one of the longest shots I've ever seen when you consider the state of that program a year, under 2 years ago, Matt.
So we have now Alabama goes down. Tennessee's going to be in the top 3. Georgia looks the part. Ohio State had the week off. Clemson took care of Florida State like they should have. I mentioned TCU. They remain undefeated. Their comeback win against Oklahoma State. USC goes down. We finally got that Saturday where there was a little bit of a shakeup. Michigan dominates Penn State. I don't want to hear about Penn State being a top 10 team again. They can never win in those top 10. Like, get out of here with Penn State being a top 10.
Give James Franklin a raise.
I'm sure they will. They'll finish 9-3 and he'll get a contract. Get out of here with Penn State. I watched all of that game on Saturday. The division between the two isn't even close. So now, Paul, we have that first Saturday where there's really been a shakeup. We'll get out of here on this one. Based on what we saw and learned from some of the upsets around the country, these ranked matchups and these undefeated matchups, where do we sit now going into the midway point of October and week 8 of the season?
Well, Alabama is looking in from the outside. I think that's obvious, and I think we are looking at a couple of titanic showdowns down the road. We had one yesterday. The SC loss at Utah, I felt, was pretty easy to predict. It barely happened, but it was easy to predict. I think the Tennessee-Georgia game, the Ohio State, Michigan game
Yep.
is becoming the defining game of the season in some respects, and it may not mean that much depending on what else is going on. Clemson, I think, has been very sneaky, quiet, but also is in a phenomenal position. And somebody said, "Well, don't you realize they have Syracuse this week?" Actually, I didn't until somebody reminded me. Nor do I care, because I didn't go to Syracuse like most of the people that you and I talk
It's
to
going to
every
be
day.
the Bristol campus is going to be insufferable for the week.
So I think it's been a fascinating season. I think it's still going to take a little time to shake this thing out. You would be foolish to rule Alabama out, and I know Lane Kiffin. I'm going to see Lane Kiffin this weekend, and it's still. I'm having a hard time wrapping my arms around what exactly has Ole Miss done this year.
Right.
I mean, I love Lane. You love Lane, but their biggest win is over Kentucky with a banged up Will Levis. And by the way, a game they should not have won. So they have a chance, but I think they're in they have a dangerous stretch here. And I did not see this Michigan train coming down the tracks, but good for Jim Harbaugh. I'm glad, and I bet he's glad he didn't get the Vikings job.
Yeah, I mean, it is setting up for just a hell of a back half of October and early November. I'm going to give you this because there's two parts. One, I want to branch off quickly on Ole Miss because I want to throw this out as a possibility because I saw it on social media last night, which, everything on Twitter is true, so it's amazing.
Of course.
But let me just throw this out there, Paul. Alabama wins the SEC, okay? So they're 12-1. They're in. Ole Miss loses a heartbreaker to Alabama. They're 11-1. Tennessee beats Georgia by a field goal. Chase McGrath. They lose to Alabama by a field goal. They're 12-1. Georgia's 11-1. So you got 11-1 Ole Miss, 11-1 Georgia, 12-1 Tennessee, 12-1 Alabama. Is it conceivable we have a 4-team round robin in the college football playoff? Who would you leave out at that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll try not to, go all SEC on you here. But if Tennessee can get to that game undefeated and loses to Alabama, I'd be pretty inclined not to leave them out. And then there's, I mean, there are a lot of teasers the rest of the way for both of us and everyone else to play with. And all those things are possible. But I think if Tennessee wins at Georgia, Matt, Georgia can just move on from the conversation.
What a season we have in store. And by the way, did you just drop a little SEC nugget, which you never do on the show? Am I to assume we might be headed to Brian Kelly and his family next week for Nation?
Yes.
Did I decode
yes.
that or okay?
Yeah, right. We're heading to the Bayou, and we were going anyway. So I can't tell you how happy those of us on the world famous SEC Nation show, at least I was. I know Tebow wasn't, but I was happy to see LSU win. Going to Baton Rouge with the Tigers on a 2-game losing streak set up for a rather sleepy morning in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, so here you have it. Jaden Daniels looked phenomenal at Florida. So now you've got LSU feeling good again. You've got Ole Miss undefeated. Just as it ever was, Paul. They're going to roll out the red carpet for you and the rest of the stars of that show. Cannot wait to watch it. Always enjoy our Sunday mornings. I was particularly excited for this one because rarely do we see the hype live up in reality.
And one last thing for any of you bloggers, I mean, that stuff about Saban, you can't use that. That was just Matt and I just riffing on the goat. We don't want any of that to be disseminated.
Noted.
Do we?
You guys, everybody hear that? We're good. Okay, so that was clear. That was put out there. Everyone's going to respect your wishes. For Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Barrie. What a Saturday it was. Cannot wait to do it again next week, Week 8, a recap here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.